Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Data Privacy Week LinkedIn Live discussion brought to you by Optiv, the cyber advisory and solutions leader. I'm Jordan McClintock. I lead our data governance, data privacy, and protection practice. And first off, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day and joining us. When we host these LinkedIn Live sessions, we really want to time. So as we navigate through the conversation today, please do not hesitate to drop any questions or thoughts into the chat. We'll do our best to either get to them during the conversation or towards the end. So a little bit about today. Why are we here? We're going to be talking today about transparency, choice, and control, securing data in the real and digital world. So with that kind of lead in, I hope everyone knows from enterprise leaders to individual consumers that everything we do today, from business transactions in the physical world to what we do in the digital world, creates data. So what we're going to be discussing today is how to protect that data on behalf of said parties. Now, not only this protection not only deserves consideration, it actually requires extreme control to ensure confidence and trust at every single level. So here to discuss these topics with us today are Jennifer Mahoney. Jennifer works hand in hand with Optiv clients to deliver world-class data privacy, governance, and protection solutions. I'm also joined by Randy Larrier, Optiv's AI security leader, who keeps an acute pulse on our AI-enabled world and how year-over-year exponential creation of data can be both used and abused. So with that, let's dive straight into the topics. Oh, and it looks like we might have lost Jennifer. She is coming back. Jennifer, can you hear us? Hey, Jennifer. All right. Well, Randy, we're going to jump to you, actually, and we'll come back to Jennifer. So, Randy, as our resident AI guru, you often tout about the wave of generative AI we're riding and the exciting and how it offers ample opportunities. But can you briefly touch on a few of the lesser known privacy risks to both individuals and enterprises to come out of AI adoption?
Sure thing. As everybody has seen with the onslaught of generative AI and a lot of other, traditional predictive AI solutions that have come out over the past few years, AI sits on top of a pyramid of data. More data has historically been shown to be the pathway to get more effective models, and the incentives and drivers of researchers and technology companies are not necessarily aligned with the incentives of organizations that want to have a tighter control on data. So certainly in a privacy and risk perspective, there's a lot to be concerned about with this current state of AI models. For one, they as everybody's using these AI models, obviously they've been trained on data that may or may not be sensitive. But let's put that to the side. Just think about how we're using them. There are models, not only ChatGPT, but tons of different startups and services and plugins that do all sorts of amazing things to make your life simpler, but that require data as an input. That data, generally, the better that data is, the more complete it is, the more reliable the model can do things. On the flip side, that may involve sharing personal details, sharing PII and PHI. And so there's this push-pull between the incredible promise of these technologies and the fact that they are sitting on the servers and in the environments of companies that may not have the strongest track records or just haven't been around that long to secure sensitive data. So anytime that you're working with AI, you have to recognize that that is a model that is hosted somewhere. And set aside the AI, just thinking about the infrastructure to host that. Someone has to receive your data, someone has to store it, someone has to process it and do things with it. And all that are opportunities for a breach, opportunities for misuse of data, and a place where things can leak. Additional concerns, we're seeing a lot of examples of prompt injection type attacks where you can actually get a language model to reveal what it was given as its system message or other information that may not like to be released. There are also examples in some of the recent, for example, the New York Times lawsuit against OpenAI, that with the right prompting, you can actually get wholesale back the sensitive data that the model was trained on. So, this is a concern, obviously, for privacy and compliance meetings. It's also important to keep track of where AI is in your environment or where you're interacting with AI, which is very difficult to do given the explosion of tools and capabilities in this space. I know Jennifer had a few things to share, so I don't want to monopolize all about AI. If we want to pivot back to privacy, if you're good to go, we can probably pause it there.
Jennifer, you with us?
I think I'm with you.
Okay, perfect. You are excellent. Yeah, so I think we'll circle back to kind of touch on some additional points, Randy, that you just brought up. But Jennifer, let's go over to you. So, let's start with kind of what is the current state of data hygiene? You authored a blog post last week, which cited customer names, emails, and passwords are included in an estimated 52% of all data breaches. So the question for you is, where does the onus fall when it comes to protecting that data? And whether they've been a victim of a breach or not, how can organizations regain both customer and consumer trust?
Yeah, Randy brought up a lot of great points about data and AI use of and exposure to, and just sort of the increased risk and attack surface that AI brings. The onus for protecting data is on companies, the companies that have collected data. There's a duty of care to protect consumers and to secure their data, to do right by consumers morally, ethically, legally, all of these things. And doing the right things drives consumer trust and can enable organizations to capitalize on the relationships that they have with individuals and those individuals' data. After a breach, there are monetary fines and things associated with regulatory requirements, but the biggest damage is reputational harm. And to recover from that, to rebuild trust with consumers, the things that an organization can do are, to be public, be transparent, and notify the consumers with what has occurred, the steps that they're taking to rectify and prevent that from occurring again, be visible about improvements that they're making, be vocal about it in as many ways as they can. And as consumers, we can help ourselves out, right? Exercise the choice and control mechanisms that organizations give us as we are pushing our data into applications that we use, our smart devices, signing up for warranties for products that we buy, just every place that we swipe our credit cards and debit cards and things like that. Social media posts. There are so many ways that we put our information out there, sometimes by necessity, sometimes by choice, and companies are ready to just pull all that information in so that they can use that information to try to better serve you. And taking advantage of the control and choice mechanisms that are increasingly driven by regulation to control the way that companies collect our data, and how they communicate with us about services, opportunities, products that they have, and things like that. There's definitely the onus on the organization, but there are some things that we can do ourselves to help ourselves out as well.
Yeah, then I think both from an individual standpoint, but also from a practitioner. I think one of the easiest ways to lose trust is to not be transparent with what their business practices are, what data you're collecting. I've been a part of multiple breaches, and when I get the full report, I'm kind of under the impression that, or I didn't even realize they collected that data on me. And I would love to know what was that processing activity. So usually, what I see a lot, both with client data and my personal life, is if we're not turning up front, if the event happens there, I'm going to have a lack of trust, and that's going to be very hard to earn back. So I know, Jennifer, both you and I have spent a lot of times on the consulting side of trying to get organizations to understand you're collecting, how are you using it, and transparent with where you're sharing it goes a long way in just setting the groundwork for having a relationship with both the end user, client, or employee. All right.
Absolutely.
So with
and
that
the way
said,
that the organization
Randy, I'm going to
communicates
start
that.
to you real. Oh.
Sorry, Jordan. I was just going to say that the way the organization communicates that through the privacy notice on their website or that accompanies their products, you know, that communication platform is the first thing that an individual has access to in terms of the way that an organization is collecting and processing data. So to be transparent in that privacy notice and to write it in a way that it's understandable and consumable by the individual would be really helpful. If you are using obscure terms or just not being clear about what's happening, it raises questions with your consumer.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, Jennifer, I'm going to come to you for another one. A lot of moving sands within the privacy regulation space and the regulatory space as a whole in cybersecurity. But one of the quick things I wanted to hit on is how quickly is this legislation having to move to keep up with the advancing technology and data creation? I guess maybe a better question is it even possible to keep up from a regulatory standpoint?
Technology changes quickly, and some of the regulations that we have are flexible to meet some of the technology changes that have been occurring. However, legislation by definition moves slowly, just with all the checks and balances that we have in our governmental processes, and the federal versus state versus sectoral nature of the regulations that we already have in place. And while it feels like there have been a lot of regulatory changes in the privacy space in the last couple of years here, especially here in the United States, but also internationally, technology is going to outpace regulation always. And this year in the US, it's a presidential election year, so things tend to slow down while folks focus on other things and kind of wait to see what happens. And so what we can do as privacy professionals, as organizations, is do the best thing, do the right thing, look to industry frameworks and guidance for best practice, and build a foundation that is flexible to meet what we might see coming. International regulations are kind of historically in the privacy space have set precedent. And what we see in emerging state laws is alignment to, in particular, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU. And so, we kind of have this little bit of foresight by what's happening internationally. Same thing is happening in the AI space with the EU AI Act. We have some activities happening at the federal level here in the US with the executive orders that have been in November, the executive order from the Biden administration, but legislation trails and of course, as we see is trailing technology. And the best thing that we can do as as organizations and as privacy and security professionals is know what our regulatory requirements are, know our risks and our vulnerabilities and address those in the best way that we can, train our people, and then remain flexible in our processes to meet kind of what's coming next. And it's always going to be changing. Technology is changing. Regulations are going to change to try to keep up, and just kind of be ready for change.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Randy, I was going to ask you, Jennifer hit a little bit on some of the international AI legislations coming out. What are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, just to really harp on one point too, the acceleration that AI provides, everything bad that can happen in your environment without AI can happen with AI just faster. And if you think about, reputation and trust, which take years and years to build up, it only takes, a moment for that to be blown up by a bad process, a bad individual, or now a bad AI doing things that you don't want it to do. So regulation aside, which is, a substantial topic, I think it's important for leaders and organizations, anyone who's thinking about using AI, to really, put that risk perspective on of using AI to provide value without completely, evaporating some of the trust and brand value that's been built up over time. As we switch to, thinking about regulation, ChatGPT did a lot to get people's attention. I think that, anybody who's been following the space has seen kind of a steady march of increasing capability with language models and other types of AI. But really, since December of 22 and the widespread availability of ChatGPT, a lot of legislators, a lot of regulators have been looking at AI as a tool that needs to have better controls around it. And so we've seen a number of state and local laws that have been proposed or gone into an effect. A common one I talk about a lot is in New York City. There's a law when you use AI to help you make decisions with with hiring. You have exposure to potential risk if your AI is making decisions that are biased and reflect the current population of your workforce rather than the diversity of the broader workforce. We have states, Texas, California, New Jersey, all have come out with statutes related to data privacy, and also have heated debate going on right now about AI. It's also important to note that it's not just ChatGPT and large language models that's in the crosshairs. Anytime you're using an algorithm to make a decision on behalf of your organization, you are effectively moving some of that risk from the individual who is doing it to the model. There's this saying we say around here, you can't get rid of risk. You just transfer it. You move it around. You change it. So really, as you're thinking about bringing AI into anything that has, existing kinds of risks, such as data privacy, such as reputational, such as a number of other kinds of, risk factors, it's important to think about AI in that context of really well-intended, but frankly not well experienced individual who can very quickly do what they're told, but might do the wrong thing very fast. And so, yeah, the legislation will catch up, but there's also existing statutes on the book right now. The FTC has plenty of legislational authority to go after companies that are being unfair with AI. And as a new administration comes in, or as the administration moves into a second term, the makeup of who is making those decisions and how that may happen will change. And then certainly as the overall tech landscape evolves, as more capable models came up, I think we're in for a long slog of legislative, regulatory, and legal court battles over AI. So for organizations, it's good to just sort of level set on what your specific risks are and the places where you're exposed, as well as the opportunities, and make some decisions that build on the value without putting a ton at risk.
And I do have one more topic I want to hit on this regulatory space in particular. When we look at especially some of the privacy regulations that have rolled out in the past, often, for better or worse, the individuals who are often writing these regulations, they're leveraging some consultant groups to help get some expertise on the particular topic area. But often we see some ambiguity, right? And one of the things that we really try to look at and manage is, what is the nature of the law? Not necessarily looking at the letter of it, because that's not always feasible, but what is the nature and scope of what we're trying to accomplish? For both of you, are we seeing something similar in the continuing evolving privacy space? And is it also reflective in some of the AI regulations that we're expecting to roll out?
Go ahead, Randy.
Okay. Oh, well, we've spoken to, dozens and dozens of leaders, especially in the security organizations, as well as some executives and boards over the last year about AI. Everybody recognizes the opportunity. Everybody also recognizes that this comes with risk and comes with uncertainty. And so I think that the most important thing that leaders are looking for is a structured approach to think about this risk, to organize and govern what you do and don't do with AI. I think everybody has seen that there is such widespread adoption of various AI tools. It's not a practical solution to block it. When organizations block access to AI on work computers, employees might pivot to their personal computer or even their mobile phone and do even more risky things to try to get information they need. So there needs to be a training and policy approach to give folks the right awareness of what they can and can't do with AI. That's according to company policy. And there needs to be an onboarding and enablement of tools that have been vetted for the risks, that have been reviewed about what's the worst thing this could do, what's the the probability of the risk and the impact of the risk, just like you would with any other kind of technology. I think one of the interesting things about Optiv being in the security and privacy protection space already is this is not an unfamiliar conversation. This is just a new end user, a new use case to a stack of existing security and privacy and governance capabilities. And so I think it's important to structure and think about things from a not so much of a this is brand new and everything's changed. I mean, CISA put out a great blog post last year that I commonly point people to when they ask, what are we going to do about this AI thing? Basically, it's AI is software. Software must be secured. And full stop. That is all really we are talking about. Very capable software, very, very fast moving, potentially dangerous software, but no different than anything else that you bring into your environment that needs to go through a life cycle and needs to be secured by your teams.
And Jordan, you talk about kind of the intention of regulations. Organizations don't need regulations to tell them how to do the right thing. And what we hear in talking with companies ahead of applicable AI legislation and ahead of applicable privacy legislation, for the vast majority of individuals on every conversation that we have is how do we do the right thing, and how do we do it in a way that's going to grow with our business, meet our business goals and serve our customers. And so, kind of tying back to that transparency and respect topic that we hit on at the top of the conversation, offering individuals control over their personal data before an individual state has granted them the rights in legislation. I live in the state of Washington. We don't have comprehensive consumer privacy legislation quite yet, but a number of organizations that have my personal data give me the opportunity to opt out of sharing into delete my data and things like that. Same thing with AI. And as we are talking on strategy and governance approaches to AI, even if there isn't a letter of a law telling organizations what to do, there are frameworks in place, there are best practices in place, and learning from what we've gone through with cloud implementation or with any new software type implementation, there are lessons learned that we can carry forward and apply to best practices.
Excellent. All right. Thank you both. So Randy, this next one's for you. At Optiv, we always have a pretty strong messaging that, whether we're looking at reducing risk or treating security or privacy, it's really not a project. We really look at it as a program, knowing that a large piece of getting a program and operational efficiencies in place is taking top-down buy-in, right? Getting leadership to understand the messaging and being able to advocate for that approach and program. Does the same hold true for deploying AI solutions? And how can leaders bake a security or a privacy-first mindset into their data management practices when we're using something as quote unquote new as AI?
That's a great question, Jordan. Of course, my answer is going to be yes. This actually ties in nicely to what one of the users asked too about how generative AI helps to reduce the risk. I mean, at the end of the day, look, you are never completely secure from risk. You're never done protecting from bad guys and bad things happening. It's an ongoing cat and mouse game where we're going to develop, certain protections, and both adversaries and, unintentional, mistakes are going to cause risk for our business. Like I said before, AI is just software. It is a part of our software stack that is highly capable, but it is also something that is highly in demand and useful to technical and non-technical users across the business. So we recommend, and where we see the greatest success from the board on down, mandating a governance procedure and policy and approach towards AI to be consistent, to be clear about the opportunities and the risks and what the organization is going to do to take advantage of one while mitigating the other. So I think that in the long term, what organizations are going to need to do is have multi business units contribute to an AI governance council. You're going to need input from legal risk and compliance, who are always going to be looking at all the bad things that can happen and ways to mitigate some of those things, whether it's contractually, whether it's changing the way we operate, whether it's working with certain third parties and not working with others. You'll need your technical folks who really understand the ins and outs of how AI gets developed and how data gets worked with. And you also need your business, because there's a trade-off. There's definitely significant return to investors that are unlocked by using AI. And as we've seen with AI, with analytics, with data, all these projects are destined to fail if they're not embedded with the business knowledge of what is actually useful for your end users, for your customers, for your market. So all those folks have to come together, and there's obviously a trade-off of what risks you will and won't accept, and every organization is different. Where AI then comes to the defense is, that does increase the workload of security and risk teams, but we do have tools that can help us, look at more alerts faster, can monitor large language models and other kinds of AI, can provide automated responses and triage of things in the modern SOC. As well as help with managing tickets and communications. So every step of the way, as you think about what we as knowledge workers do, both in security and outside, there are incredible emerging capabilities that can be leveraging AI, can be designed in secure and compliant ways, and can be built into your organization. It's really a question about making the right investments, oftentimes in data infrastructure, to be able to only feed that data that it's appropriate, and to know how it's managed, to have complete lineage and visibility into what it's doing. But when you make those investments and you're a data-enabled company, then the AI options are really, really exciting. And so, long story short, there's major transformation happening in our economy and in our businesses. This is a multi-year, trend that we will certainly see play out in interesting ways that we probably can't predict. But the leadership and the investment and the focus has to come from the top. Otherwise, you'll have multiple business lines competing and conflicting, and you'll have confused users and customers, and you'll increase the risk that you end up having that reputational damage or regulatory hit.
Yeah, and Randy, I really like one piece that you hit on in particular. We very rarely hear from clients that just one particular group's looking to use AI. Right. It is, to your point, something that is pretty prolifically asked for across the organization. I know a lot of individuals ask me, where do we even start? Right. And I think that to put yourself in a point of defensibility, you've got to do something, whether it's a policy. Even if we decide we're as an organization, we are not going to approve any generative AI use. We still need to create some policy, do some messaging so employees know and understand that there is actual policy for this work. But also there's a tier, right? It's not all or nothing. There's the varying levels of gradient that you could actually start to put a process in place. But to one of the points you hit on, I think there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done when looking at bringing AI in, whether it be what data is permissible to be loaded in, what vendors or tools are we going to work with, looking at some of the bias prevention and ethical data use concerns coming out of those models. So, Randy, for you, are you seeing clients frequently ask for a similar thing, or pick your brain about a particular topic, or is it pretty widespread?
Optiv services clients big and small in every sector, so there is obviously a lot of variability. Some clients are already far ahead on their proofs of concepts and looking to look at specific tactical testing of solutions with our threat team, and some are still figuring out their policy and working on how to securely and carefully step into this world. The good news is Optiv has services that run this gamut, because it is so related to our core mission, that there are folks who've been delivering these kind of solutions for the better part of 2 decades, even though the AI that is specifically interesting may have been rolled out last month for Meta, but it's still it's software that fits into that broader context. And so we've had a lot of really good conversations across the life cycle. And we have assessments also to help organizations figure out where to start, which is usually a good low cost, easy way to get into thinking about how to structure your AI journey.
Excellent. Thank you, Randy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So Jennifer, next question's over to you. Recently you participated in a fireside chat with the National Cybersecurity Alliance. I believe that was yesterday, which touched on data privacy and preference management from a consumer's perspective. I'm curious, can you briefly share, for those who are concerned about how their personal data is managed, what are a few simple steps that they can take themselves to practice better data hygiene, and B, How can organizations show that they live up to those standards?
Yeah, well, and I've already talked a little bit about preference management and the way that organizations can offer choice and control to consumers, to customers. The conversation yesterday with NCA was great, and one of the things that I was reminded of during that conversation is that the National Cybersecurity Alliance maintains a list of links where you can go to visit company websites to manage your privacy settings, and you can search NCA manage privacy settings to find that. But the organizations have varying levels of transparency in terms of visibility for those settings. I was talking to one of our colleagues yesterday who was kind of reminded to go through the television settings on his TV to kind of update those. And as things change, what we can do as individuals is, first of all, read the privacy notices in terms and conditions. Those are not one and done. When you sign up for a service, when you sign up for a on a website to use that site or subscribe to a streaming service or get a new phone or a new smart device in your home. Organizational data processing changes as their business needs change or as they have new ideas, and their privacy notices will be updated to reflect that. And so for the lifetime of our relationship with an organization, we receive emails or push notifications on our phones that these things have changed. Go read them and re-educate ourselves on what the company is doing with your data. And sometimes it's not that clear. And I was in my home last week here in the Pacific Northwest. It was very cold, not this past weekend, the weekend before, and we had no water for 4 days. And on Thursday, we had a plumber come out. Our water was back. Had a plumber come out to fix some leaky faucets and he kind of casually mentioned, "Thank you for your patience with me. I'm still kind of getting used to things," and mentioned an app that he had used to record himself approach the front door and kind of give his sales spiel, and then kind of do the walkthrough of the work that needed to be done. And I said, "I'm sorry, what?" And I had not been informed that that recording was going to occur. And so kind of very calmly asked a couple questions, and I'm waiting for feedback from the company to kind of talk about that a little bit further. But even where we think we are kind of doing the right things and trying to educate ourselves, things come at us out of left field sometimes too. So just kind of being aware, listening for reading keywords, listening for keywords, looking through settings on all the different apps and devices and appliances that we have. One of my neighbors evidently got a new dishwasher because when I was trying to get reconnected at the top of the top of the broadcast here, one of my choices for network said Samsung dishwasher. So congratulations to my neighbor who has invited this new this new thing into their home. So, but there are things that we can do, but kind of being aware of where our data is a challenge. Data sharing practices. Our data goes far and wide beyond where we initially push our data out into the world, and so trying to keep on top of that, kind of regularly revisit our subscriptions and things like that. And when we're done with an app on our phone, and we talked about this yesterday, you can't just uninstall the app and think that it's done. Request the company to delete your information, to delete your account, and then you're done, right? And so just kind of trying to educate ourselves, trying to educate our coworkers and our families. There are a number of things that are just going to being comfortable with change, right? the world is going to continue to change around us. Technology is going to continue to change. AI is going to continue to become more prevalent in our daily lives, both from a business perspective as well as our home life. And so kind of just being data aware is kind of the best sort of thing I can say, is in terms of taking an approach and developing an approach to your data hygiene practice.
Wonderful. I think that that example of the plumber is a great example of transparency, choice, and control, especially in our daily lives. So, with that, appreciate you two both being here talking about this topic. Jennifer, Randy, any closing thoughts before we leave the group?
So, just to summarize, and again, great examples from Jennifer, that having a coaching tool that can help you to, sell better, to service better, is a good thing in theory, right? With some caveats. I was thinking even, having a tool that can read all of the fine print and all these things and help point out where you might want to have a conversation about your privacy rights is relatively easy to build with today's AI capabilities. So there's all these potential valuable things that AI brings, but it does bring with it risks, and it does bring with it a change in how business operates. So I think, if you're on this stream, if you're listening to us and subscribe to Optiv, you're probably in the security and risk space. You're probably thinking deeply about these things now. I think this is an excellent time for everyone in this space to really lean into this change, to get educated on what it can and can't do, the risks it presents, and the opportunities. Because, if we don't speak up and have a voice at the table as security and risk experts, we know which way it'll go by default. And so I think we have an opportunity to help build the guardrails and make sure that the solutions our businesses build are thoughtful and, don't run that risk of destroying, shareholder value in an instant. And so would encourage more engagement here and, look forward to the conversation on LinkedIn after this as well to engage with our audience and answer any more technical questions they may have.
And to invite others to be part of the conversation with us, our security and privacy brains, we are focused on the things that we need to focus on to protect our organizations and to protect our consumers and communities, but inviting that cross-functional conversation with the business, with other areas across the business, with marketing and legal and everybody else, to make the decisions that are best for the individual whose data we have and are processing, as well as for the organization, meet organizational goals. That cross-functional approach is really helpful, and we appreciate it when our customers bring that to us from the start. But and as individuals, things that we can do, again, just to kind of be data aware, and kind of try to stay up on where our data is, who has it, and who's sharing it. It's a challenge. Change is constant, but there's always something. There's always somewhere that we can start, whatever side of the table that we sit on.
Excellent. Well, Jennifer and Randy, thank you for this meaningful conversation around transparency, choice, and control in the world of data security. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining Optiv for our LinkedIn Live. If you're interested about anything you've heard today, whether it be privacy, governance, protection, AI, please connect with us at optiv.com to view some of our resources and get in touch with us for discussion. So thank you, everyone.